Have you ever wondered if there is a financial game being played behind the scenes? A game to challenge the US dollar? Well, there's a fascinating theory making the rounds that some of the world's biggest players are doing just that, and they're supposedly using silver to do it. So let's dig in together and see what's really going on. I mean, just look at that quote. The most important monetary shift of the 21st century, and nobody is talking about it. Wow, that's a huge claim, right? It suggests there's some kind of silent financial reset happening, right under our very noses. So what on earth is this all about?
The core idea here is that some major countries, pushed into a corner by global politics, have secretly built a whole new way to trade with each other. And the foundation, the very bedrock of this new system? Physical silver. It sounds like something out of a spy movie, doesn't it? Let's get to the bottom of this, starting from where it all began.
Okay, so every good story has a starting point, and this one kicks off with a huge, and I mean huge, real-world problem. You see, after all those Western sanctions, the oil trade between Russia and India just blew up. I mean, it went through the roof. But that huge success created an even bigger headache, a multi-billion-dollar headache. We're talking about $40 billion. Just let that number sink in for a moment. That's how much money Russia suddenly had piled up, completely stuck in Indian banks. So India's paying for all this oil, but Russia, well, they couldn't spend a dime of it. And the big question is, why not? Yeah, this quote from back in 2023 really hits the nail on the head. Russia literally called the Indian rupees pointless outside of India. Can you imagine that? They've got billions of dollars worth of a currency that's basically monopoly money as soon as they try to take it home. This wasn't just a small problem, it was a massive crisis that threatened their whole trade relationship.
So here's the core issue. The Indian rupee, well, it isn't like the US dollar or the euro. You can't just go and swap billions of them on the world market. So Russia was in a real bind. They couldn't bring the cash home. They couldn't change it into dollars because of the sanctions, and they couldn't find enough stuff to buy in India to spend it all. They were trapped. They desperately needed an escape hatch.
And this is where the story takes a fascinating turn. Faced with this impossible situation, the theory goes that these countries cooked up a brand new system, a creative and kind of brilliant new financial architecture designed to go completely around the US dollar and solve that rupee problem for good. Basically, the whole idea is that they built this clever new pipeline for money, a system that uses a mix of different currencies and one very important physical asset to make it all work. Let me walk you through how it supposedly operates. Okay, check this out. Here's the so-called silver escape hatch. Step 1. India stops paying in rupees. Instead, they start using currencies from the United Arab Emirates and China. Step 2. Russia takes all that money and swaps it for Chinese yuan. Now here comes the magic trick. Step 3. Russia takes all that yuan and uses it to buy tons of physical silver from China. And that's the final step. The silver becomes the real money, the final settlement for all that oil. It's a complete backdoor way to get around the dollar system. Pretty clever, huh? I mean, it's a pretty wild theory when you lay it all out like that, isn't it? It really gets you thinking. And hey, while you're thinking, if you're enjoying this breakdown, please take a moment to like, share, and subscribe to follow us. That way you won't miss any of our exciting updates.
All right, it's a fantastic story, a real page-turner. But, you know, a good story isn't the same as a true story. So, does the evidence actually stack up? The folks who believe this theory point to 3 key things. Let's put on our detective hats and really examine them.
So, is this a real bombshell discovery? Or is it just a case of people connecting dots that aren't actually there? Let's dive into the first piece of so-called evidence and find out. Okay, evidence number 1, the price. Theorists got really excited about a chart that looked like silver's price was moving in perfect lockstep with the currency exchange rate between India and China. The problem? Well, you know that old saying, correlation is not causation. Just because a rooster crows when the sun comes up doesn't mean the rooster made the sun come up. Plus, the bigger claim, that silver has somehow detached from the main global price set by the COMEX exchange, well, that's just not true. Everyone in the world still looks to the COMEX price as the real price.
All right, evidence number 2, India's policy shift. People pointed out that India suddenly cut its import tax on silver from 15% way down to 6%. The theory says they did this to make it easier to bring in all that silver for the trade. But India's official reason was much simpler. They wanted to stop smuggling. And here's the real kicker. A giant deal between 2 governments like this, it would almost certainly be tariff-free anyway. So that tax cut probably has nothing to do with this theory.
And now for the grand finale, evidence number 3, Russia's big announcement.
They did in fact say they'd start buying silver for their national piggy bank, and that is a big deal. But, and this is a big but, you gotta look at the numbers. They set aside about $500 million a year for it. Now, that sounds like a ton of money to you and me, but in the grand scheme of things, it only buys about 1% of all the silver mined in a year. It's a symbolic step for sure, but it's a drop in the bucket compared to what they'd need to back billions in oil trade.
So, where does that leave us? Well, it looks like this specific theory about a secret silver system is probably a bit of a stretch. But here's the fascinating part. In trying to prove that theory, people accidentally stumbled onto the real story. And the real story is that silver is becoming incredibly important again, just not for the reasons they thought.
To really get what's going on, you have to think of silver in a new way. It's not just a pretty metal for jewelry, and it's not just old money. It's what we call a strategic metal. Think of it as having two jobs at once. On one hand, it's absolutely critical for all our new technology. And on the other hand, it's still that trusted safe haven, a store of value when things get rocky.
So let's talk about the real facts, the things we can actually prove. For starters, for years now, we've been using up more silver than we're digging out of the ground. That's a supply deficit. At the same time, demand from industries, we're talking solar panels, electric cars, all that stuff, is just exploding. And on top of that, you have regular investors and even some central banks quietly buying it up as a safety net. These are the real forces at play. And this chart right here just shows it perfectly. Look at this. The demand for silver in old-school stuff like photography, it's basically vanished. But then look over here. The demand from electronics, batteries, and my goodness, solar panels, it's like a rocket ship going straight up. That new demand is huge, and it's not slowing down. You know, at the end of the day, basic economics is pretty simple. When more and more people want something and there's less and less of it to go around, well, something's got to give. To bring things back into balance, the price simply has to go higher. It's not some grand conspiracy. It's just economics 101.
So maybe we've been looking in the wrong place. Maybe the big story isn't some secret backroom deal. Maybe the real monetary shift is happening right out in the open. It's the story of silver's quiet transformation into an absolutely indispensable metal for the 21st century economy. A metal so critical to our technological future that it's becoming strategic money all over again. And you know what? That might be the most important story of all.